The House Appropriations Subcommittee on Labor, I can't get it right still, on Labor, Economic Development, and Lifelong Learning will come to order. Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Chair Snyder.
Here.
Representatives Martis.
Here.
Carter.
Here.
Liberati.
Here.
Purry. Farhat. McKinney.
Here.
Van Workum. Here. Meerman. Beeson.
Here.
And Alexander.
Here.
Chairman, the majority of members are present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Representative T. Carter moves to approve the subcommittee minutes meeting minutes from the joint committee meeting held last Thursday, March 7th, 2024. Seeing no objection, the minutes are approved. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's testimony, where we are going to hear from MSHDA and MEDC. First this morning, we are going to hear from Quentin Messer, CEO of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, Hillary Doe, Chief Growth and Marketing Officer, and Josh Hunt, Senior Project Marketing Advisor. Come on up.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for your continued public service and affording my colleagues and me the opportunity to present our budget. I will provide a macro overview of where we are, and then Hillary will walk through the people and places part of our presentation, and Josh will bring it home, focus on projects. So we will begin. Why? Well, what am I not hitting? Oh. So, wanted to just quickly remind the committee of the federal factors that are influencing the necessity of a diverse set of economic development tools. Almost $400 billion to accelerate the clean energy. There was recent news that 2 projects in Michigan received a total of almost $80 million in support, Nel Hydrogen and General Motors only yesterday. Acceleration of battery technology and advanced manufacturing, approximately $100 billion for the semiconductor industry, and obviously there are various elements of that, whether it's KLA, SK Siltron, CSS, which receive federal support, as well as Hemlock Semiconductor. And then there are obviously the external factors. That's the context in which Team Michigan, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, operates. So the strategy that we're operating is the Make It in Michigan strategy. It's the strategy that was announced last year by the governor and the legislature at the Mackinac Policy Conference, focused on peoples, places, and projects. We want to grow the middle class, empower and reduce barriers. Places, we realize that we have to revitalize and cultivate the places that make Michigan unique. And then projects, we have to compete for and win projects that are going to support job growth in a number of diverse sectors. Just briefly, we obviously acknowledge that there remains a lot of work for us to do, but we wanted to just provide an overview of our what we have accomplished at MEDC. So small business support programs, we supported small businesses almost 11,000 times. What does that mean? That's either through technical assistance, work with our small business support hubs. We've provided significant funding to our small business development centers, pre-seed and second stage funding for entrepreneurs, M-Track for Michigan Tech, and as well as support for our 3 R1s, University of Michigan, Michigan State, and Wayne State, as well as the Michigan Economic Opportunity Fund. And that's only touches the top of the iceberg on what we've done for small business. We provided $73 million to 21 entrepreneurial support organizations as through our Small Business Support Hubs program. We've supported 100 high-tech entrepreneurs to start over 150 new innovation businesses that have leveraged over $172 million in follow-on funding. And the UCAN in Michigan program that Hillary is going to talk about more is our ability to develop and attract business. And she will talk about some of the tremendous results we have thus far. Places, we've invested over $70 million for placemaking programs through the annually legislative appropriated community revitalization program, as well as 2 rounds of RAP program, revitalization and placemaking program, which has leveraged from the state almost a 4X private investment in 29 communities across both peninsulas. And then projects through the legislatively appropriated and improved Michigan Business Development Program, grant program, and the Critical Industry Fund. We have secured projects over $9 billion in capital investment. Once they get to full maturity, we'll have anticipated over 15,000 direct jobs. So our vision is making sure that Michigan leads across the board. One of the things that I talk about previously is we're building a championship economy. Michigan is a state of champions, and we want to make sure that we dominate and lead across the board. One thing that I think is critically important, I think the fact that the state's chief growth officer, Hillary Doe, is also MEDC's chief marketing officer, is not by accident. We want to ensure that MEDC is in lockstep with the growing Michigan Together Council. I know a number of the legislators here participated on that council, and that we become a top state in a number of the key segments that are presented on the slide here. Hillary will obviously walk through that, and I want to leave time for sufficient questions. But the bottom line is, for us to build a championship economy, we are executing on the legislatively supported Make It in Michigan strategy, focused on people, places, and projects. These are some of the mileposts, some of the markers of success: medium household income growth, equitable job growth, becoming a Midwest innovation hub, and building a lifelong learning system. So Hillary and Josh will talk subsequently in greater detail, and maybe there might be time if you deem appropriate in questions. So where are we currently? You can have goals, but as you're building a championship program, there are certain mileposts. And so we have been made in achieving progress and top 10 status, but work remains to be done. I think the analogous is, like our Lions, we made a deep playoff run, but now we got to take that next step to get to the Super Bowl, and we're committed to doing that, not just getting to the Super Bowl, but winning. And so you can see the improvement that we've made in job growth in our targeted sectors, and those sectors include mobility innovation, semiconductors, defense and aerospace, and clean tech. That doesn't mean that there aren't focus on agribusiness or tourism, hospitality, or some of the other sectors in our diverse economy, but we really targeted those sectors that are expected to experience the most growth this decade, as well as those sectors that are aligned with federal industrial policy. We've also seen a growth year over year in our equitable job growth, but work remains. We have to continue to make sure that we improve the median household income. I think one of the things that we're grateful for is the openness of you as legislators to programs and initiatives such as the R&D tax incentive, Hire Michigan, as well as R&D modernization that will make it easier to attract some of those higher paid jobs that we're seeking and we've won. Whether it's been Lucid or Scout or some of the other companies that have made Michigan home, or we have welcomed to Michigan, that are providing engineering and higher paid jobs to go along with our manufacturing job. And then obviously, we have work to do in our net migration. That's one of the reasons why, to my right, we have the nation's first chief growth officer. We realize that the work that we need to do to make sure that we have net immigration needs a sustained focus. And that's one of the reasons why we are not only telling the incredible Michigan story, but we're also developing policy solutions, obviously in consultation with you, that are going to help us get to where we need to go. So with that, I'll turn it over to Hillary, and I will drive when she tells me to turn the slides.
Oh, want me to switch or do you want to drive? I don't care.
Whatever you want to do.
You can drive, it's fine. Whatever, this will work. Hi, everybody, how's it going? Can you all hear me? We're good, okay. I only wanted to switch about mics, but we're good. Nice to see everybody. Thank you all for inviting me to be here today, and good to see some familiar faces. Thank you, Rep. Farhad, again, for your service on the council. I appreciate that. As some of you heard, my name is Hillary Doe. I'm Chief Growth Officer for the state, and very proud to also be serving as Chief Growth and Marketing Officer for the MEDC. Have the chance to present to you all today the executive recommendations for MEDC's budget this year in the people section in particular, and also going to speak a little bit to some of our places recommendations in that people, places, and projects format that Quentin laid out for us today. So the few that we wanted to start with in that kind of overarching overview that was provided, some of those areas that needed work, right? One of them was in net talent migration. We all heard how critical population growth is, and in particular, how critical it is to attract and retain talent here in our state. We know that that's an existential challenge, and I've had the chance over the last 8 months to travel the state and be in many of your districts. We actually had the chance to hear from folks in over 800 zip codes across our state and hear how resonant this is for our communities. These are swings that the MEDC has the chance to take and is seeing incredible results with so far. So those include $20 million for talent solutions, $4 million for the Michigan Growth Office, which I can speak to, and $20 million for marketing initiatives, which I'll give a little bit of overview of. The talent solutions and marketing initiatives will go in a little bit more deeply. That growth office is to continue the work of the Growing Michigan Together Council and the growth office, so pursuing implementation of some of those recommendations, implementing a progress tracker, ensuring all the departments are aligned around growth, implementing pilots in communities across our state, as well as continued research and polling to ensure that our commitment is continued and we keep our first mover advantage. Again, Michigan is the first state in the nation to say we're going to take this challenge head on, and we don't want to lose that advantage. So that's the intention with that line item. Happy to continue to speak to it. But we'll move forward and chat a little bit about talent solutions and what that team's done so far. So the talent solutions effort is an investment to continue supporting training and placing into the individuals in those high demand industries here in Michigan, and ensuring that our young folks across the state have exposure to those critical fields. So this effort began recently, but is really an effort that's receiving national recognition. You'll hear more about this soon because frankly, it's been embargoed, but you'll hear more about it soon. But it's really an incredible trailblazing effort that the Talent Action Team at MEDC has been pursuing here and is helping critical companies across our state already in its relatively short tenure here over the last year to 18 months, hire nearly 1,600 workers in Michigan. That team, the Talent Action Team, has already collaborated with 12 community colleges and universities on customized curriculum for skill sets that are specifically needed for employers in our state. So customized curriculums for, these kind of new jobs in fields like semiconductors and advanced manufacturing. And they are creating trailblazing programs they're calling kind of, pre-K to career. And that including things like the Michigander Scholarship that you may have heard about. It's referenced here as the EV Scholars Program, but is better known as Michigander Scholars because it's expanded. They're granting scholarships to college students who are interested in entering not just the EV field, but EVs, advanced manufacturing, and semiconductors. Working directly with those employers in internships in college and then in jobs afterwards, being granted scholarships, but then ultimately, with a guarantee, if they're willing to commit to stay in state after school, they get job offers with those employers, and that has been going incredibly well. They've already, in this short period of time, granted 60 awardees those scholarships, and they have a cohort currently of over 500 folks participating in that program who are, interested in participating and could be eligible for these internships, are getting training and participating in the program. And coming this summer, they'll be launching a K-12 program, which is really exciting, focused on STEM and STEAM skills to start preparing Michigan students for the kinds of future careers we know are going to be available for Michigan students in these industries that we want to prepare our students for, because we know they're future career industries. So these kinds of talent programs, I know other folks sitting up here with me can speak even more to them, are really critical to ensure some of those metrics that we spoke to at the beginning, that median income growth is shared, that more Michiganders can take advantage of and participate in the kinds of sectors that we want to continue growing here in Michigan. We can proceed to the next one. The second area we wanted to speak to were the talent marketing initiatives. Those show up as Michigan marketing initiatives in the line item. And this is in continuation of the campaign launch last year of You Can in Michigan, and a bit of an expansion of that effort to allow us to double down on what's working and expand the talent attraction and retention effort that began last year. Michigan is really being seen by some other states as, a true sort of a prime example of what's possible in this area. You Can in Michigan has really only been in the national market with You Can in Michigan for a little over 5 months now, and to date has signed up. This says over 4,000. Now it's over 5,000. I think we're about 5,000 candidates into the jobs portal. And I wanted to share with you all some of the interesting stats there. The top states visiting that jobs portal are Illinois, California, and then Michigan. After that, New York and Texas. And even though candidates into that portal, the top one may be Michigan, in terms of out-of-state candidates, the tops are Texas, Illinois, and California. And I think that's been a really interesting finding for us to know that folks in other states across the country are looking at Michigan and interested in coming and working here in Michigan, thinking about Michigan as a great place to live. I want to also underscore how we really think about all our marketing initiatives working together. Pure Michigan is, and will continue to be, our campaign with the most brand equity. It's been in the market for a long time. This is separate funding from Pure Michigan, which we care about, want to protect. It's critical. We'll talk about that in a second. This is sort of a complement to that existing campaign, and they are mutually supporting. That's the intention, that they sort of, as you can see in some of the imagery at the top here, it's really reminiscent, actually, of some of the Pure Michigan marketing. They're intended to kind of reinforce one another out in the market and sort of help promote one another. But they're meant to meet audiences at different moments. So this is meant to meet an audience that's perhaps job seeking or considering where they want to live, and an audience that might be considering Michigan as a great place to call home. And the initial results have been incredible. It's already met, the You Can in Michigan campaign has already met over 250 million impressions, received lots of clicks, and is being successful at converting candidates. So it's been really exciting to see so far. This would allow us to also think about expanding into best-in-class growth marketing tactics, and really setting the gold standard for how a talent attraction campaign could look. All right, and now we're moving into place. So I'll be fast. We want to move along to Josh. Don't want to make anybody fall asleep early in the morning. So I'll move to our executive recommendation requests for place. Some of you are familiar with some of the programs on this list. The top is $50 million for one of our flagship programs at MEDC, the Revitalization and Placemaking Program. This is obviously a critical way that MEDC touches regions across the state. Personally, I just wanted to say here that as we did research on communities, faster-growing states, place matters. You all know this, I'm sure, but Also, when we spoke to young people across our state, time and again, place comes out on top when you ask folks what they care about and the place that they want to call home. Folks just cite, walkability and these downtown enhancements, and it's just so critical. So programs like this, like RAP, for talent attraction and retention, as we talk about that, play such a critical role. Again, sure others at the table could speak to this, but just wanted to personally speak to that. I know Josh will speak to the $25 million listed here for build-ready sites, so I'll leave that to him. I'll speak to the $15 million listed here for Pure Michigan in a moment. And finally, there's $5 million listed here for the Arts and Cultural Program to expand grants for arts and cultural institutions. I'll just say that my understanding is, that we always receive applications beyond what we're able to support in this area. And again, these are, incredible placemaking opportunities for folks in our communities that have outsized impact on our ability to, retain and attract talent, our ability to build beautiful places. It's just an incredible contribution to the communities where we're able to invest. So we can move along to the Pure Michigan slide. I mentioned this is our flagship program. You all likely know this. It has an incredible impact in the community, in communities across our state. It's also in so many ways the front door. We talked about population growth a lot today, not just to the powerhouse that is the economic impact of our tourism industry, but also a front door to population growth, frankly. When folks move to a state, their first stop usually isn't unpacking their U-Haul at their apartment. They often make a visit first. And so when we think about that funnel for growth, Pure Michigan plays a critical role in that as well. Again, we like to think of all of our marketing campaigns working together here. So Pure Michigan's a critical part of that journey from being a visitor to being a Michigander. And so the $15 million listed here is a critical part of that continued commitment. And if you needed any more convincing, which I'm sure maybe you don't, but there are an incredible number of stats here as well. Pure Michigan's been in market long enough that there are wonderful ROI studies and economic impact studies available. So you can see in 2022, the huge economic impacts here as well. $27 billion in visitor spending that can be, attributed to Pure Michigan's impact. $48 billion in economic impact, over 300,000 jobs supported, and huge state and local tax impact as well. The 2023 numbers will be available in the spring, but that's why you're seeing 2022 numbers. I'll pass it along to Josh.
Great. Thank you, Hillary, and thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to be here today. I'm going to continue to talk about place, but talk about it in the case of the Build Ready Sites program in terms of places that we need for businesses to be able to locate projects as we continue to see economic development opportunity here in the state. As we've talked about before, and as many of you know, Michigan has been behind many of our competitor states for many years in terms of having shovel-ready sites and site availability. And this program was formed previously with a much smaller budget to provide an opportunity for us to begin to catch up and eventually surpass our competing states for our site readiness activities. This program is unique in the way that it allows for supporting sites where an end user is not yet identified, and this $25 million request will be utilized to prepare sites for development or redevelopment that can create a statewide inventory of sites that are able to attract and promote business investment in the state. These would be both brownfield and greenfield sites, primarily looking at sites that are in a 200 to 400 acre range in terms of where we are seeing the most demand, but depending on the regional relevance and the importance of infield development and brownfield redevelopment, this would be looking at sites both larger and smaller than that as well. And funds for this program provide the flexibility to be used for things like technical assistance, land acquisition, assembly, engineering, infrastructure, and other improvements to make sure that we are ready when businesses are looking at where to be located with. And we can't take it for granted that there will be sites ready. And so this program helps to ensure that we are able to have sites ready for companies as they're looking to locate in the state. And as we move on from place, the next area of our three pillars of people, places, and projects is the focus here on projects. And that Build Ready Sites program is a great connector of place and projects, but really all of these pillars connect together in terms of making sure that we're able to drive towards the goals that we are going for. I have summary recommendations here, and we'll dive in a little bit deeper on a couple of the items after this slide, beginning with $500 million in requests for ongoing support for the Strategic Outreach and Attraction Reserve Fund, or the closing fund, that allows us to compete and secure more projects here in the state. That has been a program that has had substantial investment as a result of it so far, in terms of the way that it's been able to connect to some of that federal industrial policy that Quentin hit on earlier, and the macroeconomic factors that have played a role in making sure that we are able to meet the moment of the needs today in industries like mobility, advanced manufacturing, clean energy, and others, to secure the future economic development opportunities and economic opportunities for Michiganders across the state. As we continue on, we also recognize that we need to make sure that we have support for our innovation ecosystem and the entrepreneurial community, as well as we work to ensure that there are knowledge industry, knowledge economy jobs here in the state. And that's why we are recommending this $60 million innovation fund that will serve as a catalyst for these knowledge economy jobs. That will be an incredible step towards reaching our goals of increasing median household incomes in the state. Next is the $20 million for the business attraction and community revitalization line item, which is also critical to place as it supports both business development opportunities in districts across the state, as well as community revitalization activities. We'll talk more about this in the future slide, but this is a program that supports small businesses that are growing in the state, that supports business attraction and growth opportunities of all sizes, as well as supporting Main Street and other community revitalization activities. We also are requesting support for additional continued support for the entrepreneurship ecosystem, as well as support for the Michigan Defense Center, as well to continue to grow our defense and aerospace industries in the state. What we wanted to highlight here on this slide is the way that business attraction revitalization funding has remained stagnant since 2021, but as demonstrated here, our pipeline of new community development and business development opportunities has continued to grow, which has increased the pressure for our local economic development organizations and partners across the state to prioritize the most in-demand, most must-have projects that far outweigh and exceed our ability to be able to support good projects across the state. This additional funding will allow us to take advantage of this pipeline and will allow us to do the types of projects where we can convert long underutilized properties into things like retail shops and grocery stores and other community assets from the community revitalization side that give the kind of community amenities that businesses crave to truly give the community an identity. And these projects are also critical in terms of the way that we can continue to diversify our economy as well. And as we talk about diversifying the economy, really no program stands out in that regard more than the recommendation for $60 million of investment into the Michigan Innovation Fund. We are uniquely positioned to have a thriving innovation industry here in Michigan with some of the greatest universities, engineering talent, diverse base of entrepreneurs, but we must have the investment capabilities to make sure that we can keep all of those assets here in the state and that we are growing that opportunity. This is a proposal for a $60 million evergreen fund that will provide investment capital to spur job growth, research commercialization, and expansion of startups across the state. Every company was a startup at one time, and we need to make sure that startups that start here have the ability to stay here and grow here, and this fund will go a long way towards accomplishing that goal. And so with that, I will just say thank you to all of you. Turn it back over to you, Quentin, if there's any closing remarks, or turn it back to you, Chair.
Well, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I want to thank my colleagues, Hillary and Josh, but I also would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the presence of MEDC's Chief Financial Officer, Jill Spowski, who could provide in-depth commentary about finance, and obviously Bree Anderson, who is our Vice President for Legislative Affairs. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the Chair.
Thank you, Quentin. Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate the work that you and your team do here in Michigan to make us a leader in economic development in the country. With that, though, I am going to start off, and I'm not sure if this is really a question or if I'm going to pontificate here like some of my colleagues occasionally do. But you talked quite a bit about the Michigan Marketing Initiative, and I'm glad you did, because when Director Corbin was in here at the start of the budget presentation, she basically deferred to you and the team. I do have some significant concerns around what seems to be and I'm going to start off with, we are going to have a hearing directly related to tourism and hospitality coming up after the legislative and district work period. But I do have some concerns about the program, and it seems to be taking away from Pure Michigan funding, which continues to get smaller and smaller in executive budget recommendations. But the funding itself, focusing on talent attraction, which is great, and I believe that we should be doing that. I have this advertisement here that I received on February 24th at the same time that my colleague in West Bloomfield, Noah Arbit, received. I believe it was mine was on the Facey Space app. But basically, on the top right of your presentation, the picture with the semiconductor industry, and it reads on here, Michigan has a nightlife as exciting as the semiconductor career options. Find your perfect setting and make your move. And then at the bottom it says, innovate on the fab floor, then work it on the dance floor. I'm not sure the effectiveness of the delivery of this ad, and I do have some concerns about who we're going at, who the targeted audience is. So with that, I do think I am going to, you can respond if you want, and then Rep. Farhat is going to ask a question.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. I think I was informed about the additional, happy to go to Rep. Farhat. I was informed about the additional hearing, which I'm happy to speak to. Also happy to speak to the Pure Michigan funding if it's useful. I have sitting in front of me, obviously I have fresh legs in the role, and eager to spend some time with you. I've spent some time, of course, with Michelle Grinnell, who was in the role before me, and she's read me in. Pure Michigan had the benefit historically over the last couple of years of getting a great boost from federal funding, because we had ARPA funding for 2022 and 2023, as well as federal EDA funding in 2023, which did allow the program to get to spend additional money, which is great. I think all of us want all of our marketing programs for Michigan and others to get the chance to tell as big of a Michigan story as we can. And when we look at some of the stats for Michigan, I think we all know that we need to tell that Michigan story. One of the stats, I'll just be honest with you, that keeps me up at night is when we look at our population projections and also our labor force participation rate projections, which come on faster and more furious, than population growth, because we have an aging population. So, folks retire more quickly, and then we have roles we need to fill. One of the challenges we have is that we need young folks to fill those seats, and it's dire, and it gets dire quickly. And in addition to being 49th out of 50 in population growth, we're also 49th out of 50 in terms of folks who live here that weren't born here. So in addition to, retaining our young folks, which is really critical, we also need to get better at attracting folks. So telling that Michigan story in Pure Michigan is critical. I want more. I wish we could get more federal money, to be honest with you. That ARPA money was really nice. But in addition, marketing initiatives are critical in all their forms, in my opinion. And we want to be as good as we can be at those marketing initiatives. So I'm personally been poring over our efficacy at those, how Buchanan, Michigan's been performing in the last few weeks since I've taken on this role. So far, been really happy with those initial how it's been performing, but it's only been in market, as you can see, on a national basis for, about less than half a year. So we're really in early stages, and things look good so far, but happy to share as much detail on that as you all are interested in, and, happy to give y'all as much information as you want. So I'm happy to continue the conversation.
Thank you, and I appreciate that.
Yep.
And the last thing I'll just add
Yeah.
is that, as you talked about when you transitioned to the Pure Michigan slide, about the great outcomes of the program.
Yeah,
that,
it's incredible. Yeah.
that are proven over time. So, Rep. Farhat.
Thank you, Chair, and MEDC team for being here.
Yeah.
It's great to see the familiar faces
Yeah.
of our I like to think of our championship lineup here. And I appreciate the Detroit Lions reference. The Pistons aren't doing so hot, so I'm glad.
Back to
Back to back.
Back-to-back win
Yeah.
after 28 losses.
It's the whole season,
I want to talk about the talent solutions that were outlined when we were talking about the talent action team, and I'm wondering, how does that line up to, for example, a Georgia Quick Start, where in Georgia they tout it as the best in class in the nation for starting up. If you bring in a new industry to our state, if you bring in a new workforce to our state, we can get you set up like that. We can get the workforce to you. I know in Georgia there's a different structure for how their community colleges work. Here we have a very decentralized kind of model. But can you speak to maybe how this program has ranked into, maybe to our in comparison to our Great Lakes peers, or in comparison to other states?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Representative, for the question. I'll start, and obviously Hillary would correct or amend anything I may state. But I'm very familiar with Georgia because when I was in Louisiana, we had the LED Fast Start, which is Louisiana has been ranked #1 in workforce training programs for the last 11 years. And actually, Louisiana hired the head of Georgia Fast Start. I think there are a couple of things that are important to note. We have, the structure's different in Georgia and Louisiana in that you have not only a state economic development, but you also have, here in Michigan, we have LEO. So we are working very closely with Director Corbin and her team to ensure that we make it easier for companies, those, most importantly, those that are already here in Michigan, as well as those who we're trying to attract to Michigan, to say, we can provide a one-stop solution for you in order to address your talent needs. What this recommendation, executive rec, is we, in those industries that we've discussed, whether it's mobility, whether it's aerospace and defense, semiconductors, clean tech, they require a certain level of customized training that the Talent Action Team has been able to provide. I think that one of the hallmarks of the Georgia Quick Start or LED Fast Start is that ability to be flexible with non-federal dollars that are somewhat prescribed as to how you go about deploying them, which tends to be where Leo has domain. This allows us to be flexible and able to be nimble to industries that may be not incumbent to the state, but provide solutions that may be somewhat unique for each company, whether it be an incumbent Michigan company or a company that we're trying to attract. So that's the analogy for what we're trying to accomplish with the talent solutions, as well as with the align with what has happened in Georgia and Louisiana, which I'm intimately familiar with because I was there and one of the people that delivered it in Louisiana.
No, that is very helpful to know, and that's one of the things that I think is really important, is that we are flexible. And we have, I think, a resilient workforce here in Michigan where we can go from making vehicles to making electric batteries to making semiconductors. We're very resilient people here. And so I think that's important that we capitalize on that. And if the chair will permit me, I want to do a small follow-up too on the executive recommendation page. There was the $500 million for SOAR. That is a follow-up from last year's, if I'm not mistaken, in last year's deal that we did with the I think House Bill 1 was it, that we did 4001. This is a follow-up to that. This isn't a new request. This is just simply a follow-up from last year's kind of.
Yes, ongoing funding, as you stated, Mr. Representative.
Perfect, yeah. And then also, and I'll just say, the Innovation Fund. I love the innovation economy. I love that we're trying to go after our graduates and folks who want to innovate. I think it's a great idea. And I'll give the rest back to the chair.
Thank you. Representative Puri.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for your presentation here. Thank you for everything you're doing to help keep Michigan competitive amongst our peer states. When we talked about a number of things here, I wanted to dive a little bit into the kind of the visitors and tourists section of the presentation. When we talk about the ROI that some of these programs bring to the state, are we taking into account the costs that these have on local communities and municipalities? And I guess just how do we account for that?
Sure, and then if Hillary again or Josh want to comment, but I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the opportunity for us is we have in this Make It in Michigan strategy identified that we have to make sure that we develop and attract people, and we have to revitalize and cultivate places, communities, and we have to do it in such a way that we in Lansing don't impose upon, over 2,000 units of government on both peninsulas, what may be specific. For a community that is focused on tourism and hospitality, it may be downtown revitalization. For a community that is seeking to bring a lot of hard tech, advanced manufacturing job, it may be developing a large-scale site. So we want to make sure, and these executive recommendations, I think, reflect a desire to be flexible, to make sure that we are regionally relevant, but more importantly, that we don't do anything that imperil, to the nub of your question, what is already in place in the community. We, whether it's through our Redevelopment Ready Communities program that really is kind of focused on some of our smaller rural and semi-rural areas, to some of our work and transformational brownfield program in more urban areas. We want to make sure that everything we do, every program we have, has a positive ROI. If it has a negative ROI, there has to be exceedingly exceptional circumstances, often in conjunction with our legislative partners, as to why we would pursue the program. Go ahead, I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up to that. I guess when we're assessing the ROI, just making sure that it's holistic, because there might be a positive ROI for the investment that the state's making, but when we're looking at kind of the economic analysis of the opportunity costs and the externalities of costs that this might burden local municipalities, is there an overall ROI for all those costs? And I guess, is there an economic analysis that takes in all of the costs that go into something?
Yeah, so it's essentially when a project or opportunity, that project could be either business attraction or community revitalization. When it comes to MEDC to make a recommendation to the Michigan Strategic Fund Board, because obviously it's ultimately the Michigan Strategic Fund that makes a decision and it either approves or disapproves a recommendation. Typically, we at MEDC don't make a recommendation unless it has that local support. Unless the local community itself has decided that it is on board and made that holistic evaluation that it's going to be a net positive for that community. So we, as one of our criterion for making the recommendation, are really working with our local partners who've sort of said, yes, we're supportive of that. If there have been cases where we have said, oh, this feels like the right thing, but we've talked to our local partners and they said, no, we're not. And so therefore we have not recommended for it to move forward. Just going back to the championship economy, we have to have alignment at all three levels, state, regional, and local. And if the locals are not on board and feel comfortable that it's going to be positive and there are not negative externalities, it doesn't move forward and even get to the point of being recommended by MEDC.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Vice Chair Van Workum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. How many of these requests or new programs are related to the Governor's Population Council report? And then on this slide of business attraction community, my understanding that this is people looking to locate in Michigan? Is that what the blue is?
What-
Or can you,
I'm sorry. Okay, this slide.
the business
Yes,
attraction
gotcha,
community?
yep.
Is that numbers that are businesses looking to come into the state, that we have inquiries, or can you provide the committee with how many inquiries people have had, you guys have had to come into the state? Has that gone up or down?
Yeah, so this, I'll answer about this chart here, and then the other one Hillary or Quentin can take. In terms of the new business opportunities here, these are both businesses that are currently in the state that are looking to grow in Michigan, and are businesses from outside of the state that are looking to locate here. So it's both. And under this program, as with most of our programs, they are supporting both companies growing in Michigan as well as new companies that are looking at locating in the state. And what we have seen has been an increasing trend line overall from both businesses in the state looking to grow as well as new opportunities from outside of the state as well.
Can you provide those numbers to the committee on those from out
Yes,
of
we
state,
can show
out
the
of
break-
state looking
We can
into?
show the breakdown, we can provide and follow up the breakdown of here between how many of those are out-of-state businesses and how many of them are businesses in the state looking to grow.
Okay, you can provide that to the committee, thank you.
Yep.
And then the,
Yeah, on the, I will begin and then I'll toss it to Hillary. If we go back to this, to the people part, to your question, Mr. Representative, the requests were part of executing the strategy before the office, but I think the important thing is that there's an alignment with the office's mission, and Hillary, as Chief Growth Officer, can talk more specifically. But the talent action team and the solutions that we outlined in that $20 million predated the creation of the Growing Michigan Together Council. We had begun in sort of bite-sized morsels, beginning to help people understand the life they can create in Michigan. I think one way to think about it is Pure Michigan does a tremendous job of saying what you can do in Michigan. And that's why visitors from all over the world come. What we are also trying to say to people, what you can be in Michigan, whether you can be an entrepreneur, you can be an employee. So that builds upon that. But and so when the governor and the legislature created this growth office, it was aligned, but I would say aligned, but not as a result. But Hillary, if you want to comment further upon that, please do so.
Yeah, similarly, I think that most things in here, outside of obviously the growth office, either existed before or, were in the works before, but we were listening for post all the learnings from the council, the report, the independent review we did, all the learnings for the last 8 months for, things that were aligned with those learnings so that may take priority, for example. A good example is the Innovation Fund as a line item. One of the 3 pillars that came out of the growth report, the GMTC's report, was that of the 3 key things that we could do that would most help to grow the state, we knew we needed to lean into entrepreneurship and innovation. That seemed to be one of the main gaps that we had relative to faster growing peer states. So that's a good area of prioritization, but didn't necessarily, wouldn't have necessarily not occurred, right, without the GMTC report, but it's a good area of prioritization. Is that helpful?
not really. I guess what I'm hearing is,
Yeah.
had this whole report on
Yeah.
Population Council, as I skimmed through it
Yeah.
recently. A lot of it was focused on MEDC. You are the
Yeah.
growth officer person.
Sure.
And the only recommendation from this budget, from that report,
Sure.
is the Innovation Fund. So,
No, I
because a
think
lot of it was already things that
Sure.
we are already are doing. So it's usually
Sure.
that's just about actual execution
Sure.
to get it done.
Well, sure. Said differently, I would, I just didn't want you to assume that there was nothing in here that, hadn't been started before. There absolutely are programs that had been started before. But I think it's about prioritization is what we wanted to say, right? We learned a lot in that process. And so we learned that things like talent solutions are critical. And so pilots and things like that that have been tried, we know we should lean into. Apprenticeships were critical. We learned through that process. And those were some of the things that Talent Solutions have been doing a great job at. So we should lean into that. Things like the Michigan Marketing Initiative had just started. So knowing that those are really important and came out, in the process over the last 8 months, came out as a critical area of focus. And when you go through other elements of this, the Innovation Fund was another, key area of focus. So yeah, I think that, you'll see elements of it throughout this budget, but those are some that rise to the top. Does that seem fair, Quentin?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And I think the only thing I would say to the representative is that some of the recommendations from the Growing Michigan Together Council are in other agencies of jurisdiction. And then there was quite a bit of focus in pre-K through 12 or pre-K through 14 education, for example. So our focus, although Hillary is the state's chief growth officer, we want to focus on those items that were within MEDC's domain. So when I responded to your question and saying, what came out of it, this is within MEDC, but there are, as you know, because you read the report, there were things that came out of the Growing Michigan Together Council that are beyond MEDC's jurisdiction. So I don't want anybody to walk away from the committee to suggest that there was not recommendations that are going to be carried forward moving forward. There just may be in other agencies of jurisdiction and not in MEDC's.
And if I may, just quickly on that, the other things in the governor's budget as well, the 2 years of community college, for example, there was a transit recommendation, a housing recommendation. You saw those presumably in the report as well, but these are the MEDC relevant elements.
Thank you. Last question from Rep. McKinney.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate everybody being here and your work. And, just wanted to put this out there. About 10, 15 years ago, as an undergrad at the University of Michigan, literally talking to my classmates about, what we're going to be doing after graduation and all this stuff. And it was told to me on a consistent basis that people did not want to be here in our state. They describe Michigan as a flyover state. You come in, you get educated here from our systems, and you leave. And you be productive and raise a family somewhere else. Transition and fast forward to 2 years ago, while on the campaign trail, largest thing I heard on the doors wasn't about guns, wasn't about abortion. It was literally about, I want my kids and grandkids to move back to Michigan. And I told my constituents, they're not coming back until we give them something to move back to. And this is all of our responsibility collectively, because I've been to rural parts of Michigan, I've been to the suburban parts. I live in Detroit, I'm in the urban areas, I mentor a lot of our kids. I talk to our farmers, and they're like, hey, our kids do not want to inherit what we've been doing. A lot of them just want to leave the state. And so we need to not only build mass transit, we need to focus on that so people can move place to place easily and get around our state. But what you guys are focusing on, which is great, I'm seeing the startups, right? It's kind of like a startup. You guys are starting and incubating certain funds and trying to get those dollars out there. But we need to be strategic and really focus on who's benefiting from these programs, for one, and then two, realizing from our young people's perspective that they can have a place here, that they are valued here. When I'm hearing from my young people, and I'm a millennial, but it's hard being young living in this state. You feel overlooked. You feel like there's no hope. And so this is our opportunity to provide those resources to these young folks. No matter what color, no matter what background, no matter where you live in this state, that this is a place for you. because I'm tired of going on Facebook. I'm tired of getting calls saying, hey, my little one is going across the country. They're going to the East Coast. They're going down south. They're going out west. Why not cultivate that talent and figure out how to keep them here? And I know that's what you guys are focusing on, but while you're doing this, we need to make sure that these dollars, that everybody has a piece of the pie, everybody's getting those opportunities. Because what I'm hearing is it's not like that. So, I'm not sure if you guys want to touch on it, but, being the co-chair of the Aerospace and Defense Caucus with my Senate Republican counterpart, who's Mike Weber, it's a bicameral, bipartisan caucus. We're trying to figure out how to keep that industry here and thriving and build upon it. These are on average $90,000 jobs. The median income in my district is around $36,000. This is life-changing dollars that can really, in tune, change somebody's life and build a family here in our state. And so I appreciate the latitude from our chair, but I just can't help but just say this: like, we have to be more smart and strategic on what we're doing, and I just want to figure out how to keep young people here that are born and raised here, and then also attracting more young folks, because our industries are dying. I mean, we hear it all the time from various fields. They come to our committees, they come to our offices, and they're saying, hey, we got a major labor gap shortage. These young folks don't want to do this, they don't want to do that because they're leaving. So I'm going to leave it like that, but whatever you guys can attest to that, man, I appreciate it.
I didn't catch a question in there, so we're gonna.
I know, I just
We're
went.
gonna keep moving on.
I know, I appreciate it.
I appreciate your passion. I appreciate you for being here this morning, and we are running a little behind schedule, so we do have to move on. So thank you all for being here this morning.
We'll follow up. Yeah, we'll follow up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, on the agenda this morning, we do have with us Amy Hovey, the CEO and Executive Director from the Michigan State Housing Development Authority.
Hopefully they sent me that. Was it this one?
All right, thank you, Director Hovey, for being here this morning. Take it away.
Thanks for having me here this morning. While we don't have any big things in the budget to discuss, in the state budget, I love the opportunity just to update you on where we are, how 23 went, and where we're looking for 24. Yep. None of my advanced keys are advancing.
Sometimes it doesn't like to work there.
Okay. None of these stats should be new to you. You've heard me present before. We're still in a housing crisis here in Michigan. Our renters are still paying too much. The cost of for sale home, is still too high and compared to where our incomes are. Our housing stock is still old. So I've said these stats for you. Now, we have been addressing them, but as we talk about young people, we have a really hard time finding housing for people trying to come to Michigan. It's almost impossible for a recent college grad or even folks that have been in the job market for 5 to 10 years to enter homeownership in our state. We have more and more young people being forced to live with their parents in our state because the cost of entry is just too high, mostly because we don't have enough units. Our supply is way down. Our building permits continues to be way down. I do think we're making some progress, which I will share with you, but I don't want to leave the impression that we're anywhere near out of the crisis that we are have been talking about for the last couple of years. Good news now. Michigan had its most productive year ever last year. A lot of that was in thanks to you and the one-time state appropriations that you provided to MSHDA last year. In home ownership, and this is our single-family mortgage product, we had a high year helping close to 4,500 families get into homes. Our multifamily rental program, which is primarily funded by the federal government, had its highest year ever with almost 3,000 units created. I do want to remind you that you guys provided $150 million of low-income housing tax credit gap financing. That, in conjunction with the federal government, helped make these numbers happen. Missing Middle program, one of our most loved programs in the last year, was in thanks to you and your appropriation to that. That program helps families up to 120% of area median income. So think of our workforce housing, highly popular program. We no longer have any Missing Middle funds available. So while it was a great program for last year and some of those projects are still under construction this year, we don't have any additional funding moving forward. Housing Choice Voucher Program, another federal government program that provides rental assistance for our most vulnerable families in Michigan. We helped over 30,000 families with that program in 2023. We began our housing TIF program again, thanks to you. We now are able to use tax increment financing to help subsidize housing units up to 120%. Again, one of the only states in the country to have that program. Just started ramping up at the end of last year. We have a few applications in this year. So next year, when I come and report, I'd love to talk about the amount of units that program impacted. And then, of course, CDBG funds now are at MSHDA being deployed this year. We're very excited about that. That helps mostly our rural communities be able to get some additional subsidy for the development of housing. Winding down our COVID response programs. Again, this was money that came through the federal government. We invested over $1.1 billion in COVID response for renters and homeowners, helping with mortgage payments, utility payments, and rent payments to keep people in their homes while we were making our way through the pandemic. Both the SARA program and the MyHalf program are winding down. SARA's completely done. MyHalf should be done within the next month. Overall impact. Last year, we put in $1.2 billion worth of investment in housing, impacted almost 9,000 homes and families. 6,000 plus construction jobs were created, as well as almost $25 million in homeless and supportive services to our most vulnerable families in Michigan. It was a big year for us. I pushed our staff very hard at being innovative, creating new programs at the same time, continuing our programs and producing the highest volume with no more staff. So I'm very proud of the staff at MSHDA. They've worked very hard, continue to work hard to think about how we can get through this crisis We are trying to bring people to Michigan, as you heard in the last presentation, but we're trying to work hard to find a place for these folks to live. And we're anxious to tell you about what we're going to do in the future. These slides are very small, unreadable, but I wanted to make sure you have these, and we can follow up with separate PDFs. But this kind of outlines the types of programs that we have at MSHDA and the income levels that we are trying to help. Because of the housing crisis, we see families suffering up the income levels in Michigan, where we have folks that are working more than one job, still not being able to enter into our housing markets. This outlines the programs that we have, and you can kind of see for this last slide, for the different income levels. Very little at over 120%. In fact, as I mentioned, missing middle is going away. Our single-family mortgage will help at families over 120%. We have some legislation, which I'll talk about in a minute, that will allow us to use the Housing Community Development Fund up to 120%. It is vital that we get that legislation passed. Who are we supporting? Sometimes we get pushback in communities when we try to put different types of housing funding and housing projects developed. And I think this slide is really telling on who MSHDA helps. We talk about our food service providers, our hospitality industry, our teachers and our librarians, our first responders, our healthcare practitioners, going all the way up to an entry-level architect. Almost every community in this state, and it fluctuates, but our programs help 60% of the population in most of the communities in most of your districts. So this isn't, sometimes we get a little stigma with government-supported housing, that it may be just helping folks that aren't working. The majority of the programs that we have are helping our working Michiganders. 60% of our population needs help in order to afford our housing prices here. Statewide housing partnerships continuing to move forward with that implementation. I've mentioned our regional housing partnerships across the state. They all have action plans in right now. We have some funding and new programming that we're putting out to help address those plans and help implement them. Quarterly progress reports are out. They're on our websites. You all can access those at michigan.gov/housing plans. We're excited about the amount of people that are engaged in housing in Michigan and working hard to address the crisis. Different types of partners are coming to the table because it's impacting everyone in our state. What's next? We have a new program that will be announced in the next couple of weeks called My Neighborhood Program. We're kind of turning government programming upside down with this $60 million of allocation, which is a mix of the Community Development Block Grant dollars and the Housing Community Development Funds, and basically saying, tell us what you need to do in your region for housing. And this is think about a common app for getting into college. This is a common app. There's not a lot of restrictions as far as it has to be this type of housing in this exact location, helping this exact portion of our population, but more, tell us, as long as it's creating housing, whether it's rehab or new construction, single family, multifamily, home ownership, rental, as long as it's helping families at 120% or below area median income, this program is for you. We've never had such a versatile program that really allows folks to look at what's in their regional housing partnership and be responsive to those plans in trying to actually fund what locals want to be funded and need to be funded and are matching the values of those local communities and their housing needs. What I need from you in this year is the passing of Senate Bill 293. That gives us some flexibility in the Housing Community Development Fund dollars, primarily makes it easier for us to use those funds in rural areas across our state. Also allow those funds to be used to up to 120% of area median income, which is desperately needed. Again, that's $50 million out of a $1.2 billion budget. So I'm not asking for flexibility on the majority of our program dollars, but just a tiny percentage. House Bill 5032, which is still in committee. Thank you. Super important. Right now, our single-family mortgage can only go up to just over $224,000. That's well below the average cost of a home in our state. We need to be able to help a higher percentage of our families be able to enter into the housing market. Our single-family mortgage is for first-time home buyers and families at 120% or below area median income. Comes with a $10,000 down payment assistance. Passing of that bill will allow us to help more Michigan families enter home ownership. And finally, we just need more support for home ownership and workforce housing across the board. We are being as creative as we possibly can, trying to bring new players to the table. In fact, I was just meeting with a hospital in Saginaw who is willing to contribute $2.5 billion, or million, God, I wish it was billion, $2.5 million to creating housing surrounding the hospital itself. Incredible. Michigan come to the table, try to help match that. The amount of impact we can have with $5 million in a neighborhood is huge, right? So we are continuing to try to stretch our dollars. I am not just always here asking with my hand out. I'm at the federal government asking with my hand out too. The need is just huge, and you can count on MSHDA to be able to effectively, efficiently, and with high impact deploy those dollars throughout the state. Super short presentation. I'm at about 10 minutes, but I got some time for questions if you have any for me this morning.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation, and I will start with a quick question. Our office received quite a few emails, and I know there was an editorial in the Detroit News a few weeks ago regarding a proposal for a real estate transfer tax increase. Something that has been brought up at several of these regional housing meetings across the state. I know it's not included in the executive recommendation of the budget. I don't know of any legislation introduced on this at this time, but in a housing crisis, as you talked about, and housing prices are already too high. I guess, is this something that the department is pushing for? It's not on your agenda that you talked about there at the end. What would that mean, especially a tax increase in the middle of a housing crisis?
Right. So, it's not in here because it's not an introduced program. I will say that our department does realize that we have a huge need for an increase of funding to help support home ownership in our state. We have very little funds for that. So we are looking to be creative and innovative in thinking of how do we approach that dilemma within our state. We haven't formally introduced any types of programs, though I would be remiss in mentioning that a small increase in the real estate transfer tax does not impact people's affordability on a home. It's hundreds of dollars, not thousands of dollars, but I will leave it at that.
Vice Chair Martis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for being here today and for this excellent presentation. I'm going to steal a line that you typically hear from some of the folks I'm friends with on the other side of the aisle, which is we don't want to end up like San Francisco. And what I mean by that is you look at the housing crisis that they're experiencing. Something that was really interesting, kind of comparing what we're dealing with in Michigan versus a place like San Francisco. So Detroit has 3 times the amount of people experiencing poverty as San Francisco. Francisco. San Francisco has 3 times the amount of people experiencing homelessness as the city of Detroit. If average rent in Detroit is about $1,200 a month, average in San Francisco is $3,500 a month. Both are unaffordable, but obviously $1,200 is a little bit lower than $3,500. And I was just wondering, when you look at what we're doing statewide, maybe when you're looking at regional perspectives as well, where is this crisis coming from? You hear a lot about zoning. You hear a lot about the cost of construction. You hear a lot about those issues of the not in my backyard mentality. We're starting to put our money where our mouth is in terms of making sure we're investing in affordable housing, mixed use, and so forth. But we're all in agreement that it is a crisis here, not just nationally, but in Michigan in particular. What are some of those causes, and what are some of the solutions that we can work on?
Yeah, great question. I mean, the cause really is our basic econ, even just in high school, of supply and demand issues. We don't have enough supply, and we can't build our way out of it without some type of subsidy, because what it costs to build a new single-family home or a multi-family unit in our state, the average Michigander can't afford to pay. Right? And so we can't just say, let's build. If it did, our building permits would be up, right? Think about our capital market. If people could afford to purchase what it costs to build, developers would be building like crazy. Single-family home providers would be building like crazy, but they're not, because we cannot afford to build for what Michiganders can afford to pay. So it is all about supply. And when we talk about the importance of zoning and looking at permits, that's all important as well, right? Because we really do need a denser housing framework in order to get more built more quickly. So they're all very important. Our ability to approve plans and site plans and even funding from MISHDA quickly important, because the longer it takes us to go through those processes, the more expensive it gets, because costs have gone up very quickly. But that is really just the quick and short, concise answer to your question.
We do have 2 more questions before we have to move on. Rep. Van Workum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Was going over your slides, and I apologize, I'm a little under the weather, but I counted about 30 programs that MISHDA does, and you've asked now for a couple more programs. At what point do we kind of look at this and say, is there a better strategy? The issue continues to become, the issue still remains. We're coming even further into housing crisis. When do we say, take a look at all these? Is there consolidation approach? Is there just overall different approach that we should be doing towards housing? Or are we just going to continue to throw things at the wall and see what sticks?
Yeah. I am on your page. So that My Neighborhood program that I mentioned that's coming on is wiping off about 7 of these programs and consolidating it into one new program. So these are programs that we've had into 2023. So we are consolidating our programs, as I mentioned, to just make it easier and able to be more nimble and responsive to the changing needs in each of our regions, which are different. We are doing exactly that. The one issue that you say the new program is approaching, a more comprehensive approach. The one thing we don't have is enough money for home ownership. So if we got more money for home ownership, we could deploy it through the My Neighborhood program just as easily. So I agree with you. I hate this. So we are making changes.
Rep. T. Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One issue that I had no idea was an issue has recently come up in one of my committees, and it's about manufactured housing and how it is not considered when we're talking about options for affordable housing. Is there a reason why? Because there's 250,000 people in the state of Michigan that reside in them. I found this out recently. So
I'm going to say you're getting misinformation, and I'm just going to be as plain as I can. Almost every single one of our programs allows for manufactured housing. The only programs that don't are where we are using bond funds to fund a loan program, and that is because our bond holders only allow us to lend on real estate. In manufactured housing, where it is not on a permanent foundation, is considered personal property. That is the only time. So even in those loan programs, as long as the manufactured home is on a permanent foundation, then it can be for that program too. But all of our other programs allow for manufactured housing. So it's just misinformation that I'm glad you asked, so I had an opportunity to clear that up.
Rep. Farhat.
You said two, Rep. Snyder.
I did. I lied.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much for being here. One of the things I learned when we were doing the Growing Michigan Together Council was that Michigan has thousands of homes that are offline for one reason or another, right? These are homes that are either in need of repair, and I think the number was somewhere close to 100,000 plus homes. Can you speak to maybe what the emphasis is on those homes? Is that number kind of track? Is that number kind of accurate?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with that stat, so I can't answer that question.
And so my reason for bringing that up is two things, right? Well, one thing, and I'll make it very quick, is that folks who, kind of building off of McKinney's point, who are younger, like myself, struggle. I go on the Zillow app every day, and I hope there's no folks who use the Realtor app. I go on the Zillow app every day. And that every day I cannot find, I mean, it's public information how much we make. It's very difficult to find a house that I can afford or a place I can afford to move into. And so that is just the reality. And but then I'll see a fixer-upper come on the market or that's foreclosed on. That's separate, though. I'm wondering, how can we kind of attract for that? You showed the stratification of kind of the communities, that young group of, the Gen Z group of people who are just struggling to find a space. It's brutal out here. I'm not gonna lie. And so I'm sure you. So whatever programming we can do to that effect is one that I'd be very interested in.
Okay.
And if there's anything there you want to add or follow up with maybe after, I'd be happy to be a part of.
Yeah, we do have programs for rehabilitation, homeowner rehabilitation, and rental rehabilitation through that My Neighborhood program again. So we do have funds to be able to stabilize our housing stock. For those ones that need, what we don't have currently is an individual program where, an individual can access funding for acquisition and rehab, which is what you are speaking of. However, the federal government is considering what was called the 203K program, an expansion of that program and trying to make it much easier to use. It's a program that's been around for a long time, but was very difficult to administer. But we'll continue to look into that. And I do believe, too, the president is talking about additional funding for young folks to be able to purchase homes as well. So I don't know if that'll get anywhere, but it's definitely being talked about.
Yep. Thank you, Director Hovey, for being here this morning and for your presentation and for taking some questions. We do now have one card for public comment this morning. Unfortunately, she was unable to speak last week. Ida Bird Hill from Automation Works in Detroit. We only have about 2 minutes, but with that being said, I encourage you to submit any written remarks to the clerk's office so that they can be included in the minutes.
My name is Ida Bird Hill, and I run Automation Works Institute, which is a proprietary school that focuses on emerging tech. One of the things that we have done, we've been around since 2019, is that we take young people who do not want to go to college and groom them into tech certification type jobs in cybersecurity, network engineering, AI data analytics, and tech project management. Our highest graduate right now is in a job making $166,000 with no degree. Our highest Detroit at Work learner is at $85,000, $81,000, and $70,000. Whenever we talk about talent solutions in the state of Michigan, we always refer to individuals who are going to a 2- or 4-year institution. Well, Michigan was a state that created career technical education. We were the first in the nation. But right now, we're not having a lot of conversation about real career technical education. In order for individuals to go to middle skill careers like cybersecurity to make $80,000, they don't need a degree. They do need substantive training. So we take them from zero with no tech training, and we groom them upward. Now, when we first said that we were going to do that, because our programs are 48 weeks long, people were said that I was crazy. And I probably did sound a little crazy, because to tell somebody that I'm going to take you from $10 an hour to $80,000 an hour does sound a little unrealistic. But what I'm saying to you, it is very realistic. We do it every day. So far, we've educated 220 students. We carry a wait list at all times of 300 people. Now we're moving out of Detroit and southeastern Michigan because we did a feasibility study for the Kellogg Foundation to examine tech readiness in what I call the titanium triangle. That's from Big Rapids to Benton Harbor over to Jackson to see, is it ready for all of the investments that the state has made? And what we have made this decision based on all of the data, the people are not ready. Even though you're going to have you got 3 battery plants and a semiconductor plant coming, there's very little tech training that happens in that area. And so therefore, they're not going to be ready for all of the investments. And that's a challenge. What we were asking for is an appropriations from the state to be able to have money to address that issue, because we have all these investments that are happening, but we have individuals who don't have a degree who really do want a better career. And they're willing to jump through all of the hoops that we put them through to get the training, but we need more money. I should not have a wait list of 300 people. And that's just in southeastern Michigan. As we are moving into Battle Creek, Grand Rapids, Benton Harbor, and Jackson, we already know that that wait list is going to go up substantially. The issue is, where does the funding come from? Right now, the bulk of our money comes from Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, WIOA. But every time the state allocates money for workforce development, most of it is going to the 2- and 4-year institutions. I'm going to say about 96%. Our students are not going to the 2- and 4-year institutions. Enrollment has been down. So we need to look at how are we going to allocate money for those young people who do not want to go beyond a year in training. And so I'm here, just want to leave that with you as you're making your decisions, to make room for those young people, because they're all over the state of Michigan, who really only want to do a year and be able to move into a middle skill career.
Thank you, Ms. Hill, and I appreciate your testimony. We had a discussion yesterday. I encourage committee members to meet with her as she continues to advocate for her project. At this time, Representative Van Workum moves to excuse absent members. Seeing no objection, absent members are excused. And Representative Liberati moves to adjourn. No objection. The committee stands adjourned.